Well, Paul, where's Paul Johnson? Coming up, Paul, our missionary, Paul and Elizabeth, missionaries in Rwanda, and they're back here right now for a bit, and we had a great time with them Friday night as they shared, and we had a great Rwandan dinner, and they shared about the ministry. Well, Paul's going to come and just share not so much about missions. It might be a part of that, but, you need the iPad. All right. Okay. Can somebody bring the iPad up here for him? Thank you. So, Paul's going to share a bit of his testimony, but also just kind of bring the word to us here this morning. So take it away.
Thank you very much, Pastor Brent. Appreciate that. You know, thinking about what Ken was saying about the tires, I don't know if anybody of you know that I was a blue-collar worker all my life. I was working in the tire business since I was 16 years old, and now I'm 60, so that's quite a few years. Off and on, I've been away for Bible school and some mission work in northern Canada. Thank you. So that was actually the first verse or the first passage that I ever preached the sermon. And, I was working when I became a Christian, I was working on the streets of Calgary for a couple of years before I went to Bible school. But the youth pastor of the E-Free Church that I reached out to, that I started attending after I became a believer in Calgary, was the Evangelical Free Church. So he asked me to come to the mission on Calgary streets and give my testimony. I didn't know much about what you call a testimony, but I was for it. I stood up and I couldn't say anything. I didn't even memorize the verse. I don't know where it came from. It just came out of my mouth as loud as I could preach it or teach it or speak it, and that's what came out of my mouth. And to this day, it still boggles my mind how the Holy Spirit can put the words of God in your mind and your heart, and He can just take it out at the moment's notice. When you're sharing the gospel, when you're giving a testimony, nobody can ever thwart or deny or invalidate your personal testimony and story in life. Nobody could ever refute it, because it's something that when you speak what God has done and how you have a relationship to the Lord, they cannot refute that, because that's your personal experience. Now, each one of us throughout our whole life, that growth and that relationship develops into an awesome testimony for your own heart. And you go, wow, look at the things God has done in my life. Look where I'm at today. And look where I used to become, or where I became, or how I become from where I used to be. So, Ken, you mentioned again, like I was saying you mentioned about the tires. Well, I kind of calculated it here. Since I started at 16, I've done it I just put 40 years, give or take. So if I work 250 days a year and I changed a minimum of 8 tires a day, now I've changed sometimes 50 tires in one day. Now that's by hand. That's not with a machine. That's big truck tires, loader tires, car tires. Now I had a service truck the last 27 years, 16-foot box. I had a tire machine for cars, and I had a balancer as well, a high-speed balancer. All worked off of the batteries from the truck. And I figured that out myself. So I figured it out at 8 tires. That's 80,000 tires in my lifetime. 80,000. It adds up. Now, I'm sure, I know I calculated it once before. It was over 100,000. So, my body's wore out, right? I mean, let's face it. After you do those many things, you start to have a few problems. So some of the problems I incurred upon myself in my life, through work and bad mistakes and tripping over things. But also, when you're born, sometimes we have inherent problems, inherent disabilities that later on in life can cause problems. We're all going to go through that. We all experience little things. I can't think straight. I'm losing my memory. I can't figure out where to drive. But, I have an interesting story. Now, you're going to see some weird things, and I'm going to tell you some weird experiences I've had with the Lord. Not too common experiences that you would hear from. And actually, all my life, this will probably be the first time I've ever really publicly told my story. Now, I've committed myself to do that because God called me as a missionary, my wife and I, together. God called us to this church, and you guys sent me out, and us out. So, to me, it has a value to share some weird experiences in my life. And but let me start where I was born. I was born at the top of the world in the Yukon, 60 miles out of Dawson City, close to the Arctic Circle. That's the Arctic Circle, the top of the world. That's called the land of the midnight sun, because the sun comes over the horizon and then it just goes down again. It doesn't go up in the sky. So in the wintertime, you have, mostly it's dark. Some places it's all dark if you're above the Arctic Circle. That's why it's the Arctic Circle. Anything above the Arctic Circle is pitch black in the wintertime and all day bright in the summertime. So as a small boy, I used to look up high in the sky and see these kind of white lines every once in a while, and I said, what is that? So I asked my dad about that, and he said, well, that's what an airplane leaves behind when it's flying up in the air. Well, I didn't know anything about airplanes, but I said, you know, one day I want to go there. I want to get up in the air. I want to be a pilot. But you know, I mean, that was in the back of my mind all my life. But my mother, after I got to know her through my life, I started asking her questions about my childhood, and she said that I was kind of born with a kind of a weird eyesight. Like the eyes were kind of looking two different directions. Now, being in the Yukon, there's not much for doctors. We live 60 miles in the bush from Dawson City. There's no eye specialist. There's a doctor and an eye doctor. So I was being treated for what they call a lazy eye in those days, and I had these exercises and stuff to do. And then, you know, we moved out of there after my dad was a gold miner. He worked for those big gold dredges. When the economy collapsed with the gold prices, they moved out. I ended up at Terrace in northern BC since in my elementary school years. And that was the first time that I was able to go to an eye doctor, an eye specialist. So I was 13 years old, and you know, you got the thing on. You know, he's making all the adjustments, stuff like that. And then he's kind of like ticked off, you know, like, what do you see up there? You know, like, and I said, well, a couple of circles, or whatever it was. He said, why didn't you tell me? Okay, I'm a little puzzled. What do you mean? Well, you're only supposed to see one. You're not supposed to see two. There was only one, but I saw two. I'll let you figure that out. In the elementary school, you know, I was kind of a lousy student. I was too active, as my relatives can attest to. They have a little video of me when I was a kid. I was running around all over the place. You know, I couldn't pay attention. I was distracted. I was daydreaming. I usually sat in the back of the class. I couldn't study. I couldn't concentrate. I was getting very poor grades. You know, the alphabet structure for schools is A, B, C, D, E, F. Well, I was getting D's and E's. Never saw a B in my life. It was always a C, C minus, but mostly D's, mostly E's. And, you know, when we're kids, we get bullied. Name calling, you know, they used to call me Four Eyes and all sorts of weird names. So I used to be offended by that, and I kind of withdrew from society, from social groups, from kids. I was kind of a loner, did my own thing, and, you know, I kind of escaped into my own dream world, and, you know, even though I was, and I didn't understand why, other than that I was withdrawn, like, emotionally into like an eggshell, and I didn't like playing with each other, and I, you know, even like, I didn't know how to stand up for myself. But one thing about me, I was very perceptive and very, very observant. You know, there was a lot of things I would observe. I was very perception with how people reacted, how people related with each other, what type of person this was, what type of person that was. And, you know, the thing that I saw, good people, bad people, and I didn't want to be a bad person, but I knew I wasn't a good person. And I had one of the biggest fears I had was stage fright. Very bad. I mean, I couldn't even speak. It was, you know. Now, the last time we spoke here, a couple of years back, I don't know if anybody remembers that I had my sister sitting over in one of the chairs. I don't know if anybody heard that. And she just happened to come through town that day, and we invited her here, and she said, yeah, no problem. So she sat there, and I got up and spoke, and she sat there and cried the whole service. And as I came up front, I walked by her, and I couldn't stop, but I kind of like, what are you crying about? Like, you know, she's not a believer, and I thought maybe something that it was in the service that was touching her heart, and I was really going to want to talk to her after that. And I did, and she said, Paul, that's the first time I've ever seen you publicly speak. So that shows you what the power of God can do in a life, in your life. Like I say, I'll go back to when I was 13, when I had my first eye specialist. You know, I thought it was, you know, at the doctor's office, you know, the doctor asked, well, you know, why didn't you tell me you can see two things? I just thought it was normal. I thought everybody saw two things. So he explained to me, and well, that's why I couldn't hit baseballs. That's why I couldn't shoot the hoop properly. I mean, 1 out of 20 shots, I might get it in there. Other things now, they all kind of clicked, and I didn't know that this was weird. So my world's a little different than your world. I'm going to start with this little slide here. That's what I have, double vision. It's called diplopia. It bothers me. When I play when I'm doing computer work, I'm not a touch typer. I'm a plunk, plunk, plunk. Well, my mind goes so fast that my fingers can't keep up, and I always hit the wrong keys, and I got to back up and restart. And it's a constant battle, So I'm going to show you some pictures here. They're kind of weird, but it's what I found online. I have some that I took of my own years ago with a double camera. I could take 2 pictures at once to illustrate to people how I really see. So double vision makes it difficult to read and comprehend. So you can imagine reading that in school, in textbooks, computer, doing work, everything is double. So this is how I would see a hand. I see a hand here. There's another one right there. When I look at buildings, I see double. 2 smokestacks or 2, Now, when I read, that's even worse. You have a page here, and you have a page on top. You could see right through them and the words right through them like you saw in the first picture. They're all intermixed and mingled together. This gives you an illustration that I can see, you have 2 heads. Now, at nighttime, this is a real challenge. I sometimes have to close my eye when I was doing service calls at night just to get around. So you can see the double lines on the right, and the middle is kind of fuzzy. You see the fence posts over there that are lit up kind of blurry. But this is more true to what I see. If you look at the picture, you'll see the 2 far big lights. That's actually the same light. There's only 1 light, but you can see it twice. The 2 cars are actually 1 car, but I see it twice. So when there's a line of traffic coming by at night, I'm in the lane, and there's a white line of headlights going this way in rush hour traffic. Well, I see one go phew, phew, across my face every second. So I have to close my eyes sometimes, but I don't like that. So now this one's kind of weird. It's not 100%, but it gives you an idea. If you looked at that type of building, it would be really confusing because of the way the style of design is. But when you're driving in traffic, this one is pretty true, except this one's a little more intense. There's a little more separation in the images, but that's how I see life. Now in Kigali, you have a lot of traffic. You have not just cars. Here you just have cars to deal with. I have motorcycles, pedestrians, cars, buses, people cutting in front of you. Everybody wants to butt around. So you can imagine it's more intense. Now, this is the typical, we've been caught in an intersection in Rwanda like this. We were stuck in the middle, the first, But when you're trying, when you got all this, you can imagine I see twice as much on the level. I see twice as much at nighttime. And so I have to really be wary of what I'm doing. Now, my eyeglasses do not fix the problem. My eyeglasses are not for double vision. They're for seeing, like focus, like reading glasses. The prescription on my left is a little bit heavy, but sometimes I wonder how I survived. So I did get some surgery not even 10 years ago. They actually moved my eye with surgery. They moved my left eye over because it's usually going straight. So I see that image and that image all the same. So my brain, when I was young, wasn't able to put the 2 images together because you do that unknowingly when you're a little infant. Your brain is hooking the 2 eyes together, but because this muscle wasn't developed, it was looking over there, so it couldn't do it. So even with surgery, they were able to get it right on, but my brain couldn't put the 2 together. So then, for years I had a prescription where the image was way over there. Well, if that car was way over there, then I'm looking at something over here at the same time. And that created an awful lot of headaches. So I want to ask you, what's your disability? What are the things in your life that bug you? I don't know what it is. It could be any, I have a left knee that's cracked from the excessive bending over the years, and I need a knee replacement. I'm living with an extra vertebrae in my back with rubs on each bone. I have vertebrae that are thinned out. The cushions are almost gone. I have a neck that when they take an x-ray, they can't even see the neck. It's arthritis. I have extreme headaches from my double vision. I have, eye pain. So, we can either complain about it or brag about it. But God doesn't want you to complain and brag about it, or either. He wants you to rely on Him. 2 Corinthians 12:9. We all know this verse. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in your weaknesses. Therefore, Paul said, I'll rather boast in my infirmities, not boasting in a proud way, but saying, and not denying it, but admitting that I have a problem, but God is able to help me. He gives me the grace and the sufficiency. He can get me through it if I just rely on Him. That's the whole thing. We need to rely on Him rather than complain. Now, like I said, I can complain all I want. I have daily severe headaches. My memory's beginning to go. I can't even find directions now. I have to always have a map. Like I said, my neck. I used to wear a patch. When I went to Bible school, I used to wear a patch on my eye. It kind of looked like I was a pirate. But when you open your eye, it's like, wow, everything's so bright because your eyes opened up. It's like, it's really hard. But thanks be to God that we need to have a positive, we need to have a very positive attitude, even ourselves. I know that, I know a lot of older people as they get older, that's all they talk about is their disabilities. But they never talk about the Lord. I mean, the Christians, they never take the context of their pain and anxiety and burdens and really trust the Lord to see them through. And then not worry about, you don't need to talk about Him. Talk about other things. The Lord wants us to think positively, think biblically, think His way. See, at the very bottom on that, it says meditate or think on these things. We kind of forget about thinking on those things. Whatever is true, whatever things are noble, just, pure, lovely, of good report, not negative report, not criticizing others, about others, etc., etc. If there's any virtue or quality of good character, then it's to be praised. If anyone sees a good thing in others, praise them and compliment them. Let them know that they're appreciated and welcomed. Especially, we should appreciate our disabilities, our hardships, our problems, because we can get the right attitude which can help us see through it. And when we trust in the Lord, He will sustain us, He will equip us, and He'll get it through it. So in my second year of schools, when we were living in Terrace, I was searching for the meaning to life. What is the meaning to life? Where am I going? Why am I living? Why am I born to die? Why not just go from the womb directly to the tomb? Does that make sense? What's the point of living? What's the point of working? What's the point of getting a car and a house? What's the purpose of struggling and sweating if all the end is 6 foot under? Those things are going through my mind. I couldn't figure out really what the whole purpose of life was about. To be honest, I didn't really want to live. I had pain and sorrow in my youth. I couldn't understand, a lot of things, so I'd even thought about suicide. I never took action, though, but, the thought was there. Started reading some other religious ideas. But at the right time, God sent an uncle of mine, Ray. Ray and Janice were here yesterday. They live in Brookswood. Well, I lived there when I was 17 because I was trying to get in the armed forces at a recruiting center, and I stayed there for a couple of years, actually. And they wanted to witness to me, and I yelled, no, I don't want to hear it. And I walked out the door. I didn't want to hear what, because I looked at them as kind of like hypocrites, judging them all the time. But anyways, when I left to go away, they gave me a Bible, which I still have today, and it was from that Bible that I kept reading and reading. I couldn't put it down. There was something about it. I just kept reading. I couldn't put it down. For 2 years, I moved to Calgary from small town in Terrace. Well, I came here to try to get a job with the military, but anyways, I went back to Calgary, got a job. One of my Christian uncles, the right timing, God's intervention in your life, got me to Calgary, got a new job, working for Goodyear. I thought, wow, I can go anywhere in that country. I got a big future ahead. I could work there all my life and retire. Wow, this is what I'm looking for, some hope. When you live in a small town, there's no hope except owning the business. There's no promotion. It's like the only place you can go is own the business. And So I classified Terrace as kind of a dead-end town. Most small towns, everybody leaves and goes to the city because they're looking for opportunities and jobs. So that was a great thing. Calgary was awesome. But after reading the Bible for 2 years and working, I got back into the same rut that the job wasn't fulfilling. I didn't know what it's supposed to be fulfilling, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. There was something missing in my life, and I didn't know what it was. How about you? Where do you get your fulfillment and your satisfaction from? What do you look for joy and fulfillment? If it's anything to do with material things, well, that's going to be gone. We know that. There's no stability in anything in this world. There's no guarantee about our own life, as a matter of fact. There's no guarantee. I could be here today and gone tomorrow, accident or die. I read biographies from missionaries, people that go, and it's surprising how many people went on a boat and they died from some fever or some, and the wife died or the kids died, and then they would be in a mission field all alone, and then they would die. And they didn't really, it's sad, it's a sorrow, but that's a reality of life. I have to face that, I plan on, staying in Rwanda until I die, but, I don't know when I'll die, but I'm ready to die. John 3:16, that guarantees, that's the one-way ticket. For God so loved the world that he gave his son. So we need to hold on to Jesus tight. We don't let him go. But there was one time I came home from work in Calgary, and I was renting a basement suite, and I became very paranoid. Like there was some weird, thinking that somebody was watching me, and well, long story short, it literally put me on the ground, and I started crying. I was on my fours, and I'm weeping and crying, and I cried out, "Are you there?" And then a flashback of my mind came back, which something happened when I was a small child, which I totally forgot about. Is in Langley at the Free Church where my grandparents were going to. I was the only grandson, so they would always have me come down in the summertime to be with them, and then I would go up north. But I went to a DBS, became a Christian, and the mind reminded me of actually sitting there remembering every detail of accepting the Lord. So the light clicked on, and I understand. So I said, I understand. What now? And that's what I yelled. The first time God ever spoke to me was at that moment. He said, read my word. It was a very loud voice in my head. Read my word. Well, that was what I was already doing, but I kept on reading. And then a few months later, people were talking to, the young people in the church were talking about going to Bible school. What's that about? So, hey, that's a good place for me. I need to go there. I need to learn what the Word of God is. I wanted to learn myself. But all my Christian relatives on my grandparents' side, they were putting pressure on me. Oh, you're going to be a pastor and a missionary. My great-grandfather, I found out, was a pastor, homesteaded in Saskatchewan, and the church is still there to this day. But I didn't go to school to be a missionary or a pastor. I just wanted to learn the Bible. Well, then about 6 months later, when I was, continue working in Calgary, I was sleeping at night, and someone was banging on the door to my basement suite, which goes out to the, out a flight of stairs to outside, banging and slamming on the door. And I was like freaked out. So I woke up, I just laid up in bed, and I'm trying to figure out, like, somebody trying to break in and hurt me or what. But then the Lord spoke to me again. He spoke Isaiah 41:10. I heard him say in my head, do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Wow. And then, you know what? I just fell right back to sleep. Perfect calm. How about you? Do you look to the Lord for strength and help? Do you know that he can uphold you with his righteous right hand? I want to take you a little further here. John 21:14-17. Now this is where Jesus went back to restore Peter. I put Paul in there, but that's me. Not the Apostle Paul, just so you understand. So here I am. This is 2001. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I went to get some drink, and I had this whole vision of the Lord, just the whole scenario of Peter and the Lord. As if the Lord was talking to me, saying the same thing, do you love me? And then I started crying and said, Lord, I love you. Then he asked it again, do you love me? And I said, I love you. Then he said it again, do you love me? And I said, Lord, I love you. and he said, feed my sheep. For a long time, I wanted to go back to Bible school. The Bible school I was going to finally closed down and stuff like that. But I never had a chance to finish Bible school. But I didn't get that as a calling from the Lord to go anywhere. That was just my relationship with the Lord. The relationship that you have with the Lord is very important. You have to maintain that. You can't slack off for one day. The enemy's out there to make a mess of your life. So today I'm been called by the Lord to go. When we went to Rwanda and started a ministry there, which is we've now left. We've let them do their own thing because they were functioning well. The Lord called me, when the elders of that ministry said they heard from the Lord that they wanted me to be a pastor and ordain me in Rwanda. And I said, no, I didn't hear from the Lord. That's not me. I'm not a pastor. I just want to, help you guys. So I told Elizabeth, when I get to Rwanda, I got to go and find out. So I went to rent a room, stayed there for 3 days. I said I'll stay there for a whole week if I have to. But I fasted and prayed, and I said, Lord, I don't know where you're going to speak to me. If this is true, I'll read Matthew and John. And then I got through Matthew the first day and a half, but when I got to John chapter 15, if you could turn to John chapter 15 in your Bible, in your laptop, your cell phone, John chapter 15, and I'll close with this. John chapter 15. Now, when I was reading the Bible, I was not yelling, but I was talking out loud. This is, just normal talking. I wasn't, trying to make attention to myself. So as I was reading through the book of John, chapter 15, I came to a particular verse that's on the screen, verse 16. Now, as I was reading it, as I was reading verse 15, and then I came to verse 16, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. But there was another voice that I heard at the same time. And after I finished at the last word, you, it stopped, because I was continuing on. So I said, okay. I shut my Bible, called my wife, and says, time to pick me up. I heard from the Lord. So it took us 2 years to sell everything that we had in lock, stock, and barrel. We bought a little condo here, and then we left. So I'll leave that with you, that, think about that verse. Let's actually read that quickly here before I go. Let's all read it out loud on the screen, the one that's on the screen. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. I'll leave that with you. Amen.
Thank you, Paul. Worship team, come on up. We're going to close with one song. Let's all stand together.